I did come out the other side. The trip was, or at least seemed, near instantaneous, and when I came out, I felt only a little off-kilter, like my guts had been forcefully rearranged, but the sensation was pretty similar to what I felt when a ship went in or out of tunnel. I struggled for a second to find my balance, but then I felt perfectly normal, and the sense of being out of sync with reality was less vivid than a memory, more like the memory of a memory. Once it was gone, the disorientation I experienced was from what I saw around me. I was in some sort of town square. Dusty streets shot out from the square in 4 directions, and on either side were haphazard wooden buildings that looked like they'd been thrown together hurriedly. There were more fads walking the streets, and other aliens too. Beings I had never seen before, but they all had the same rough, homespun-looking clothes that Adul Ip, Thindley Bach, and Hopir Ka wore. They had boots on their feet, at least those of them who had feet, and cowboy hats on their heads, at least the ones who had heads. I felt a sudden shove from behind as Volonic came through the portal and bumped into me.
"Zeke, it is very discourteous of you to not step out of the way," he said, sounding deeply disappointed.
I was too distracted to be annoyed. This, I realized, was an Old West town. My world had gone full Firefly. The sky was clear and deep blue, streaked by only a few wisps of clouds, but the air also sparkled with occasional flashes of energy that manifested as patches of blurriness. This, I had to believe, was the settlement's cloak, which kept it from being discovered by the Imperial Phatic forces. As a pleasant side effect, the air must have been 30 degrees cooler. The town wasn't large by any means. Really, little more than a permanent camp, with a couple dozen wood and stone buildings for, I guessed, maybe a couple hundred beings. The buildings themselves seemed to be thrown together from local supplies, mostly stone and plant fiber. The streets, which was a generous term, were just obviously straight lines in the dust between buildings. Even so, given what they had to work with, it was an impressive achievement. What struck me the most, though, was that these rough buildings, combined with the dirt roads, the desert environment, and the wide-brimmed hats that just about everyone wore, made this seem like a frontier-themed park. It was like one of those Star Trek episodes where they beam down to discover a world that's exactly like some period out of Earth's history, one generally familiar with American, only the aliens in those episodes didn't have tusks. I wanted to be gone, and I wanted to be gone hours ago, chasing after Tamret and the others. But the truth was, I had no idea where and what I could possibly do once I found them. If these guys had information, resources, weapons, and muscle, it was very possible they could be my new best friends. I took a deep breath, told myself to be patient, and turned to Adul Ip. "You said you have some kind of plan to end the Empire's rule," I said. "Can you tell me about it?"
"Of course," Adul Ip said. "We would be honored if you and your trusted companion would hear our top-secret plan for breaking the Empress's grip on this region of the galaxy."
"About that," I said, drawing Adul Ip away from Volonic. "The thing is, he's not really my companion. Or trusted."
"But your friends are legendary,"
Adul Ip said, sounding very disappointed.
"The clever and resourceful children of your homeworld, and the heroic randoms of Ishi and Raro. Surely he is one of these."
"No," I said, speaking as quietly as I could so Volonic's excellent hearing wouldn't pick up what I was saying. It wasn't that I was afraid of him hearing, so much as, for reasons I couldn't explain, I preferred to avoid hurting his feelings. Look, my friends are amazing. You're right about them. Destroying the cruiser at Ganar, for good or bad, that was me acting alone. But everything else you may have heard about me was a team effort. You should admire those guys, but he isn't one of them."
"Then who is he?"
"He's an idiot," I said. "Really, I don't know how else to put it. He's a mostly well-meaning guy who comes from an important family and who, until recently, has never had to confront the fact that he isn't terribly bright. He's not bad, just kind of dim. He's also a blabbermouth. I've never known anyone to blurt out more secrets than this guy. And I don't even think he's aware that he's doing it. You don't want him in on your briefings. Adjul Ip looked over at Volonic, who was in the process of doing his little introduction dance to a guy who looked like a humanoid with an octopus head.
He seems harmless enough to me.
Believe me, I told Adjul Ip. In the 2 seconds they've been talking, he's probably told Cthulhu over there every secret that he's been exposed to since he arrived on Confederation Central.
That is unfortunate, Mr. Reynolds,
Adjul Ip said sadly.
Our organization is built on trust.
Then you see why you have to keep him out of any briefings?
If we do that, then our organization is no longer built on trust.
I was starting to think I liked the narrow-minded, bloodthirsty fads better than the kind and trusting ones. I was also starting to detect some disappointment in Adjul Ip's expression, as though he might be wondering if Zeke Reynolds might not be the hero he'd previously believed. I had to put the brakes on that, and do it quickly. I didn't need to be admired by the greater galaxy, but I wanted to be trusted by the beings who could help me get to my friends. You guys have built all of this, I said, so I have to think you know what you're doing. We'll do things your way. Adjul Ip bowed at me.
I am so glad to hear it. Now, come with me. There are beings that you must meet.
The building we entered could only have seemed more like an Old West saloon if the word saloon had been painted above the door. Inside was an assortment of aliens to rival Maz Katana's castle. They sat at tables, laughing, talking, eating, drinking, and, in one instance, pouring some sort of sludge into what looked like a blowhole. A machine that vaguely resembled a tractor played music on an instrument that looked a little like a bathtub filled with rubber balls. The sound was nothing like a player piano. Frankly, it was less like music and more like someone pouring buckets of nails on a marble floor. But the beings inside seemed to enjoy it. Behind the bar, a gigantic, sympathetic-looking bumblebee wearing a leather vest and a bandolier was pouring a drink for a depressed-looking alien of the same species. Its antennae were drooping. As soon as we entered the saloon, the music and conversation stopped. It was that moment, like in a movie, where the guy who obviously doesn't belong steps into the place where he absolutely should not be. For a brief instant, I got to feel like the good guy sheriff making his first appearance in a crooked town. But then everyone went back to their food and drink and conversation, which was fine by me. I didn't want to have to get into any shootouts. Adjul Ip led us to a table and brought us biologically appropriate food and drink, which was welcome. The 2 other fads, who had escorted us, had drifted off somewhere, and the conversation went into suspension mode while I ate and drank. The food and moisture packs had kept me alive and given me energy, but they hadn't really satisfied me the way an actual meal and actual drinks would. This food was some sort of bread with some kind of cheese. A little dry, but not bad. The drink tasted like a combination of sweet tea and pineapple juice, and hit the spot like maybe nothing else I'd ever had. When I was done, I wiped my mouth and turned to Adjul Ip. I really appreciate the hospitality, but my friends are in trouble. If you have a plan to help them, I'd really like to hear about it, and sooner is better than later.
I am not the one to brief you, he said, but here is the being you want to speak with.
I had not seen anyone walk in. Maybe I'd been too focused on eating and drinking, but now a being stood by our table, silent and motionless, in a way that it had to know was intimidating. From the neck down, it sort of looked like a classic Star Trek alien. It had a vaguely humanoid body with clothes of an inexplicably retro design, but made from shimmering space-age fabric. These included a form-fitting, silvery tunic that went all the way to the floor, so I couldn't see its feet. Over that was a robe that went all the way down to its wrists, and it had a high-pointed collar that overlapped the back of its head. Its hands were covered with silver gloves, so no part of its body below the gown's high collar was visible. I thought of the alien as an it, because there was nothing about this being to indicate maleness or femaleness. Absolutely nothing in its face, because it didn't have a face. No eyes, mouth, nose, or ears that I could see. It did, however, have a head, which sat resting atop the collar, probably connected by a neck, though I couldn't see it. The head was covered with material that looked neither natural or artificial, smooth and skin-like and vaguely synthetic all at once. Its color changed constantly, not in flashes, but more like a gentle shift from one point in the spectrum to another. Red, easing into yellow, into green, into blue. Also, it's worth pointing out, its head was shaped exactly like a 20-sided die.
This,
Adjul Ip announced,
is convex icosahedron. Convex icosahedron, may I present Zeke Reynolds.
The hero of Ganar,
cried Convex Icodysynchron, in a voice so deep it almost made my teeth rattle. It definitely sounded masculine, so I would assume that it was male, unless someone told me otherwise. The being's voice seemed to somehow emanate from the being's entire head, as though the words were formed through vibration.
It's good to meet you. For my analysis of the data suggests our efforts will be 30% more effective simply because you are part of our organization, Zeke Reynolds.
Anyone who has ever traveled in deep space knows the awkwardness of that moment when you meet a stranger and want to ask exactly what it is. And this was that moment. I had no idea what kind of biology, if any, was going on with this being. After my encounters with Smelly, a construct from the age of the Formers, whose nature had remained an almost complete mystery while it was living in my head, I had realized that the universe was a stranger place than I had even begun to suspect. Now, with this faceless being in front of me, I realized I had to up the strangeness quotient another notch. "Hi there," I said, with a half-hearted wave, hoping someone would explain something to me.
In my culture, Zeke Reynolds,
said Convex Icodysynchron,
there are conditions when it is customary to speak a being's name when addressing him, her, it, thrum, flickim, or ixmo.
There are things I wanted to learn about, but at that moment the nature of an ixmo was not one of them. "Hey there, Convex Icosahedron?" I tried.
Hey there unto you, Zeke Reynolds,
he replied, bowing deeply.
Great tales have been told of you, Zeke Reynolds. Songs have been sung, Zeke Reynolds. Puppet shows have been performed, Zeke Reynolds.
That is super excellent, Convex Icosahedron, I said, wondering how quickly and politely I could get out of this conversation. I'm really honored to hear that. Everyone stared at me like I'd just belched at the coalition. I'm really honored to hear that, Convex Icosahedron. The sighs of relief were audible. I now officially hated this guy. There was nothing appealing about having to say his stupid name every time I spoke to him, but everyone seemed to think it was utterly vital. So the only solution I could think of was to avoid speaking to him entirely. I hoped I didn't have to do the name thing when talking to everyone. Honestly, I wasn't sure I could remember all the Fad's full names.
While you're with us,
Adjul Ip said,
Convex Icodysynchron will be your main liaison with our operations. He will be the being you speak to most frequently. Isn't that wonderful, Convex Icodysynchron?
I am so pleased to be able to assist you, Zeke Reynolds. I hope you are also pleased, Zeke Reynolds.
You bet I am, Convex Icosahedron, I said, and tried with all my strength not to groan. Convex Icosahedron suggested that I might want to sit in on a strategy meeting with some of the other high-ranking renegades.
I'd like to see my room first,
Volonic announced.
I want to be sure I'll have a nice place to sleep given how uncomfortable I was last night. That escape pod of Zeke's is very inhospitable.
Adjul Ip led Volonic off to Old West Motel, or whatever, while Convex Icosahedron took me out of the saloon and down the street towards some other buildings. We walked in the heat, and I looked around at the variety of aliens who were going about their business. Towards the far end of the road, a tall, broad-shouldered being, with a head like a weasel, used a stick to guide a couple dozen cow-sized creatures into a pen. They were 4-footed and seemed docile enough, but instead of hair, they grew what looked like thin planks of wood on their sides. What are those animals, Convex Icosahedron?
Those are nerfs, Zeke Reynolds. We harvest their spiny growths to construct our buildings, Zeke Reynolds.
Nerfs, I repeated. So that guy is a nerf herder, convex icosahedron?
Precisely, Zeke Reynolds.
The wonders of the universe truly never cease. Do you mind if I ask you a question, convex icosahedron?
I cannot know the answer to that until I hear the question, Zeke Reynolds.
That was fair enough, though at the same time completely annoying. I'm sorry if this is insensitive, but are you alive or an artificial entity of some sort, convex icosahedron?
I don't see why that would be offensive, Zeke Reynolds.
Because you have a game piece for a head might not have been the most polite answer, so I just shrugged, which got me out of having to say his name.
We are geometric upstarts, Zeke Reynolds.
That's the name of your species, convex icosahedron? I asked. It sounded more like a mathematically inclined street gang. Convex icosahedron assured me that it was, in fact, the name of his species. And are you guys, biological or artificial convex icosahedron?
We are both, and neither, Zeke Reynolds. But really, are any of us truly biological, Zeke Reynolds?
I kind of felt that I, for one, was truly biological, but instead of making the point, I decided to smile like it was an insightfully philosophical point, and all my questions had been answered to my complete satisfaction. I really hoped that this geometric upstart was better at providing an operational briefing than he was at making chit-chat. Otherwise, we were in serious trouble. We entered an unmarked building that might have been someone's home, but unlike the saloon, on the inside it appeared modern. Or futuristic, I guess. Whatever it was that you expected from space-traveling aliens, that was it. The floors were made of smooth, white material, like tile but not quite so slippery. There were computers everywhere, screens displaying data and readouts. The stations were being worked by both fads and other aliens. I did not see anyone else who might have been a geometric upstart, though. We moved through the room, and all the aliens turned to offer polite and respectful greetings to convex icosahedron. He might have been difficult to talk to, but he seemed to get a lot of genuine respect from the other renegades. We entered what looked like a meeting room, and convex icosahedron told me to have a seat.
I will summon the others, and then we will begin the meeting, Zeke Reynolds.
I feel like we're just wasting time, I blurted out. I don't need all of this formal stuff. I want to know what's going on. I want to do something to find my friends and help them. Then, under pressure, I added, convex icosahedron, as though I had merely forgotten that part. As though I merely hadn't gotten to that part.
I understand, Zeke Reynolds. This meeting should answer your questions and give you a clear sense of our intended direction, Zeke Reynolds.
After an endless delay of about 20 minutes, the other participants began to file in, including Hopper Ka and Thidley Bach. Ajul Ip soon followed with Volonic.
I hope all is to your satisfaction, Volonic,
convex icosahedron said.
Of course,
he answered,
but I'm not fussy.
I waited for Ajul Ip to press him to say convex icosahedron's name, but the fads didn't seem to notice the lapse. Neither did the geometric upstart. Why was I not surprised that Volonic could somehow get away with violating that annoying rule? A few more beings entered the room, mostly fads, but a few other alien species I didn't know. Then, another human walked through the door. Under normal circumstances, this would have been reason to cheer, but not this time. This was an older man, wearing an Earth military uniform. He had a head full of silver hair, buzzed into a crew cut, and a patch over his right eye. It was Colonel Richard Rage, the man who had betrayed me and my friends to Junit.